the horrifying dark moment in American history, the Tulsa Massacre. Chapter 1. The Setup. Have you ever wondered how one of the most prosperous African American communities in the US was almost wiped off the map in a single day? Our story begins in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in a district called Greenwood. This was not just any district, it was a remarkable place, a land of opportunity and prosperity, particularly for African Americans in the early 20th century. Greenwood was the epitome of Black economic independence and was often referred to as Black Wall Street. It was a radiant beacon of hope, a testament to what African Americans could achieve in an era marred by racial segregation and profound inequality. Greenwood was a vibrant neighborhood, bustling with businesses ranging from grocery stores to law firms, from hospitals to schools, all owned and operated by African Americans. It was a place where dreams were not only dreamt, but also realized. A place where the American dream seemed attainable for those who were often denied it. But this flourishing community was about to face a tragedy of unimaginable proportions, a calamity so severe it would leave a deep and lasting scar on the face of American history. A catastrophe that would almost erase the thriving Greenwood district from existence. In the span of 24 hours, this prosperous neighborhood was reduced to ashes. Lives were lost, dreams were shattered, and a community that had been a beacon of hope was plunged into despair. It was a dark day, a day that has often been overlooked in the annals of American history. This is the story of the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921, a story of hatred, violence, and devastation. A story that needs to be told not just for the sake of those who suffered, but for us to understand and learn from our past. To understand the magnitude of what happened, we need to go back to the roots of the incident. Chapter 2. The Spark. It all began with an incident in an elevator involving a black shoeshiner and a white elevator operator. The year was 1921 in the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma. The shoeshiner was a young black man named Dick Rowland, and the elevator operator, a white woman named Sarah Page. The details of what transpired within that elevator remain shrouded in mystery. Some suggested a stumble, others a misplaced touch, but the exact sequence of events remains unknown. What is known, however, is that following the incident, Sarah Page screamed, and Rowland fled the scene. The narrative quickly spiraled out of control, shaped by the racial tensions of the time. Rowland was soon arrested, and the news of the incident spread like wildfire, igniting a spark that would set the city ablaze. The day after Rowland's arrest, a local newspaper, the Tulsa Tribune, ran a sensationalized article. The headline read, "Nab Negro for attacking girl in an elevator." The article was filled with racially charged language and insinuations that led the white community to believe that Rowland had attempted to assault Page. The article was filled with racially charged language and insinuations that led the white community to believe that Rowland had attempted to assault Page. This narrative was not based on fact, but rather on the deep-seated racial prejudices of the time. The story gained traction, and the white community's outrage grew. A mob formed outside the courthouse, demanding justice, or rather, their version of it. Inside, Rowland waited, his fate hanging in the balance. Meanwhile, black community members, many of them veterans of the Great War, decided to take a stand. They too gathered around the courthouse, armed and determined to protect Rowland. The tensions between the two groups were palpable. A confrontation was inevitable. The white mob, enraged by the presence of the armed black men, viewed their actions not as a defense of Rowland, but as an act of defiance, a challenge to the established racial order. This was the spark that ignited the Tulsa Massacre. A simple incident, blown out of proportion by racial prejudice and sensationalized reporting, led to one of the most horrific racial violence incidents in American history. And with that, the fuse was lit. Chapter 3. The Explosion. The tension in the city was palpable. The fuse reached the powder keg, and the explosion was catastrophic. It was May 31st, 1921, a day that would be seared into the annals of American history. Greenwood, a prosperous black community in Tulsa, Oklahoma, known as the Black Wall Street, was under siege. A mob of white residents, inflamed by rumors and resentment, descended upon the district with a horrifying blend of rage and purpose. In the early hours, the mob unleashed their fury. They stormed Greenwood, their faces twisted with hatred and their hearts ablaze with destructive intent. Buildings crumbled under their wrath. Businesses that once stood as symbols of black prosperity were reduced to rubble and ashes. Homes, filled with memories, love and life, were set aflame, offering a terrifying spectacle against the night sky. The violence was not confined to property. The mob targeted the people of Greenwood, their neighbours, with merciless brutality. Men, women and children were dragged from their homes, beaten and killed. The streets ran red with blood, echoing with the cries of the innocent and the laughter of the guilty. In the face of such horror, the residents of Greenwood fought back. They defended their homes, their families, and their dignity with courage and resolve. But they were outnumbered, outgunned, and overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the violence. By the dawn of June 1st, Greenwood was unrecognizable. The once thriving district was a smouldering wasteland of charred buildings and broken dreams. The mob had moved on, leaving behind only destruction and the haunting silence of a community in ruins. The death toll was staggering. Hundreds of black residents were killed, their lives snuffed out in a storm of fire and fury. Thousands more were left homeless, their livelihoods destroyed, their futures uncertain. In less than 24 hours, Greenwood was reduced to ashes. The vibrant heartbeat of a community was silenced, replaced by the eerie quiet of a ghost town. The powder keg had exploded, and the shockwaves would be felt for generations to come. Chapter 4. Aftermath. When the smoke cleared, the devastation was overwhelming. The Tulsa Massacre left an indelible scar in American history, not only in the burnt remnants of buildings or the mass graves, but in the hearts and minds of those who survived and their descendants. The aftermath was a chilling spectacle of devastation. Thousands of African Americans were displaced, their homes razed to the ground, their lives in ruins. The Greenwood district, once a thriving hub of African American businesses and residences, was reduced to ashes. The economic impact was staggering. In today's money, the loss would amount to approximately $27 million, a catastrophic blow to a community that had been flourishing. But the economic loss was merely one facet of the aftermath, as deaths would be estimated to be from 75 to 300. The emotional and psychological trauma inflicted upon the survivors and their descendants is incalculable. Families were torn apart, lives were lost, and a community was shattered. The massacre was a grim reminder of the racial tensions that plagued America, and its consequences reverberated through the generations. The lack of accountability following the massacre was chilling. And in the end, Sarah Page would leaving instructions not to press charges against Dick Rowland. Dick would later be released and would also leave the city never to return. Despite the overwhelming evidence of a planned and coordinated attack on the African American community, no one was held responsible. The city, the state, and the nation turned a blind eye to the atrocities committed, and the massacre was swept under the rug. This was not just a failure of justice, it was a systemic erasure of a horrific crime against humanity. The cover-up that followed was equally appalling. For decades, the massacre was omitted from history books, forgotten in public memory. The survivors were silenced, their stories untold, their pain unacknowledged. It was as if the Black Wall Street, with its vibrant community and prosperous businesses, had never existed. This was the aftermath of the Tulsa Massacre. A community decimated, a crime unpunished, and a history forgotten. The Greenwood district, once a beacon of African American prosperity and resilience, was reduced to a ghost town. The Black Wall Street was no more. Chapter 5. Remember. The Tulsa Massacre left a permanent scar on the city and the nation. A raw, undeniable wound that has remained unhealed, a haunting reminder of a devastating time in our history. The massacre didn't just rob the people of Greenwood of their lives, but it also stripped them of their prosperity, their dignity, and their sense of security. The trauma of that day seeped into the very fabric of the community, a trauma that would be passed down through generations. It is important that we remember what happened so that we remember not to make the same mistakes again. Before we end the video, I leave you with a piece of testimony of Viola Fletcher, one of the last living survivors of the horrifying massacre, speaking at a hearing for Congress. Let us always remember the history so the same mistakes are not repeated.
I went to bed in my family's home in Greenwood, neighbors of Tulsa. The neighborhood I felt asleep in that night was rich, not just in terms of wealth, but in culture, community, heritage, and my family had a beautiful home. We had great neighbors, and I had friends to play with. I felt safe. I had everything a child could need. I had a bright future ahead of me. Greenwood could, Still, Greenwood should have given me the chance to truly make it in this country. Within a few hours, all of that was gone. The night of the massacre, I was awakened by my family. My parents and 5 siblings were there. I was told we had to leave, and that was it. I will never forget the violence of the white mob when we left our home. I still see black men being shot, black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I have lived through the massacre every day. Our country may forget this history, but I cannot. I will not, and other survivors do not, and our descendants do not. I am a 107-year-old and have never seen justice. I pray that one day I will.
Thanks for watching. To support us, please like and subscribe.